Well, hello, everyone. We warmly welcome you to our Sunday morning Roundtable discussion. This morning is Sunday, March 31st, 2019. We are recording from the Plainfield Christian Science Church Independent, Plainfield, New Jersey, the United States of America, and we're so glad you could all join us today. And we will start with our morning prayer.
From page 224 of Divinity Course and General Collectania, the Blue Book. Oh, may the light that is never dim so encompass you that no night is there. May his angels hold thee in their power, and songs of science be heard in the intuitions of thought, till your life is in tune with the rhythm of God. Mary Baker Eddy.
Thank you. Beautiful. And today I'm going to read from Science and Health Glossary, the definition of church. The structure of truth and love, whatever rests upon and proceeds from divine principle. The church is that institution which affords proof of its utility and is found elevating the race, rousing the dormant understanding from material beliefs to the apprehension of spiritual ideas and the demonstration of divine science, thereby casting out devils or error and healing the sick. This morning, I have a few things to discuss before we get into the lesson. And the first, we will start with the watching.
Watch number 180. Watch that you make the right decision in the valley of decision. See Joel 3:14. One is called upon to decide between a human experience that is harmonious under the effects of demonstration, but which brings little growth, and one that brings increasing development because of constant problems. There can be little development unless one has opportunities to demonstrate. A man going through a jungle might have the choice between walking along in imaginary safety or hiring beaters to bring the wild animals out from under cover for him to destroy. Under the latter action, his path would not be peaceful, but it would be progressive and beneficial to all. A right decision is to be willing to have all forms of error brought out from their hiding places as fast as one is able to meet them, in order that one may cross swords with them and overcome them. If a balloon made in some frightful form was lying dormant, it would not frighten you, yet it might be inflated at any time. Therefore, the sooner it does become inflated, the sooner you will stand up to it, conquer your fear of it, and puncture it. The inflation of air does not increase its power or make it more real, but it does bring it out from under cover, where you can handle it. It means that it has been brought out from its hiding place and is ripe for destruction.
Thank you very much. I think this may have been Mrs. Evans' favorite watching point. She lived by this, and she taught us to live by it as well. You see, there is the peace where there is no peace that we talked about yesterday, where you're just ignoring problems entirely and saying everything is lovely. And then there's also, in science, things begin to get better. He brings out the peace through demonstration. Things do get better. And we found this definitely in the movement. Healing, supply, huge amounts of supply. Things get better. So then what happens if you're not careful?
You just stay there?
Go to sleep.
Go to sleep, yes.
Go to sleep, and you worship the effect. Forget the cause.
And then you begin to think the effect is what is important. And you think the effect is what Christian Science is all about. the great jobs, the supply, the lovely vacations, the perfect little children that do perfect little things or whatever. And then that just takes over. And then sometimes you get people who look on it and are jealous and think, well, boy, look at them. They're really demonstrating science. Well, they could be just sound asleep. Maybe not, but they could be. And we don't know, so we shouldn't judge. Anyway, so this is really how Mrs. Evans operated. And if and Mrs. Eddy too, when there was human harmony in her home, what did she do?
Shook it up.
She shook it up.
And what did she do when the beautiful bouquet of red roses was sent to her by someone for a less than pure purpose?
And then back.
She had them burned, yes.
So it's better. So if you were coming up upon trials in your study of science, well, you can rejoice because things are coming to the surface to be healed. And better that than you're just in this sleepy world where you think everything is fine. And if your life does, through science, get truly better because you're practicing that science, then what are you to do with your life?
Give it to God.
Yes.
Be even more grateful to God.
Mrs. Eddy said, if there's even one person on this earth suffering, our work is not done. So if your life is made truly better through demonstration, then you reach out to help others, and others, and more others, and more others. But you don't fall asleep with your happy little life. So this is a highly important watching. Thank you, Ray.
I think the point of, because error, gets aggressive or whatever, it does not increase its power. I think that's an important one that I learned, because I always thought, oh my gosh, it's all, I don't know what I'm going to do. It's like it's all over now or something, because things got worse, But no, I like that point very much, that it does not mean it has any power. It still doesn't.
It doesn't.
What is it, Joel 2? What is the,
Yeah, I believe
you said Joel
3:14.
3:14. Thank you.
And the watching point number was 180, so you can look it up again. We have that book online, and it is it's a masterpiece of Gilbert Carpenter. So he saw all this. And where do we get this teaching? I never got it from the organization. I never heard of human harmony. I never heard of a lot of this stuff. So thank God. And believe me, it is authorized literature, not unauthorized. Which leads me to my next discussion. We heard, all of you know that we've gotten these books. We call them the Terry Flynn books. They're the book, someone in Texas who went edition by edition, Mrs. Eddy's Visions of Science and Health, and brought out the changes that were made. And we got them from a group in England. And I'll be ever grateful if Royce, by any chance, is listening, because Royce was the one who got us back in contact with Marjorie Morgan. Because we had lost contact with them. Years ago, we went to England. We met John and Marjorie Morgan. And we also were visited many times by Richard Oakes, who was English from England, and he was very good friends with the Carpenters. So recently we got a little packet from our friends in England, calling it the Christian Science Foundation, incorporating Christian Science Research Library and the bookmark UK, which if I knew there was such a thing, I'd forgotten it. And then they write, "We are delighted to know you have received the yellow copy of Terry Flynn's papers on the evolution of the Christian Science textbook, Science and Health with Key to the Scriptures. We have retained the red copy for our own research library. You may be interested to know that our research library began in 1930 with Richard Oakes. His friends, the Gilbert Carpenters, Sr. and Jr., were keen to ensure that the unpublished writings and sayings of Mrs. Eddy were available in Great Britain to enhance the future safety of what had been collected. Richard acted on this idea, and as a result, essays and Bible lessons, footprints fadeless, and Course in Divinity, Collectania, etc., the red and the blue books, were published after the Second World War. Also, a collection of different editions of Science and Health was added, following the work of Alice Orgain on the revolution of science and health. And about 1980, Richard brought his library to Cambridge. The collection of the editions of Science and Health has increased over the years, and we now have over 300 different editions, including a small number which were printed after Mrs. Eddy ceased numbering them. Quite recently, we produced a document, The Evolution of the Christian Science Textbook, which follows the scientific order of the days of creation. A copy is enclosed along with a short description of our collection. Beyond this activity, we are much comforted to be in contact with you, another independent group, and hope that this relationship will develop in the future." So they sent us this pamphlet, The Evolution of the Christian Science Textbook, which I suppose we should get their permission to put it online, and another just a little thing on the Christian Science Foundation, which I will have Jeremy put on our carousel today. He says, or they say, that they have a research library which is now housed in the village of Elmdon near Cambridge, England. So, you see there is another place, and the place was truly created by the Carpenters. Because if you haven't read, I'm going to have Jeremy also put this on the carousel, Discerning the Rights of Man by Richard Oakes, you all must. It tells you of how the organization went after the Carpenters because they had this wonderful collection of what the organization calls unauthorized literature. They did everything they could to get it in their hands. And this little pamphlet reads like frankly, it reads like a murder mystery because they were out to get them, and they used any means they could. And Gilbert Carpenter Jr., his life ended, sooner than perhaps it should have because of the stress of all of this. But what they did was they gave the books, everything, to Richard Oakes to create this haven in England where they couldn't get it. Okay, the VOD couldn't get it. So this library, this collection continues with over 300 editions of Science and Health, which is amazing.
And lots of other really profound, really good books, some of which we have now.
Yes, and we are getting them. And before I get into that, I wanted to mention, because many of you now have become very, very interested in what is known as the Blue Book. This is one of Richard Oakes' books that he said here after World War II. He compiled it. If you want to know the real name of it, which is why we call it the Blue Book, Notes on Mary Baker Eddy's Course in Divinity, recorded by Lyda Fitzpatrick, CSD, and others. Watches, Prayers, and Arguments given to students by Mary Baker Eddy. Items from Gilbert Carpenter's Collectania, not already included in the above. Instruction in Metaphysics from Mary Baker Eddy, recorded by Dr. Alfred E. Baker, MD, CSD, together with some notes on metaphysical work. This This is why we call it the Blue Book.
And this is why it's Florence's favorite book.
Because it has all of the wonderful writings by Mrs. Eddy. And we don't sell it, but you can get it. We used to get it from Rare Book, who is now Keystone.
David Keystone, Healing Unlimited.
Healing Unlimited, and I'm sure the bookmark also has it.
It's also available on Amazon, where I got my copy.
Thank you. Amazon has everything. We also, what's known as the Red Book, which is essays and other footprints, and that has also compiled works of Mrs. Eddy in what's known as the Red Book. And Joseph from Scotland, he recorded footprints, and footprints is actually another version of Mrs. Eddy's autobiography telling about her life. And we have it on audio. Joseph did that. And then there's also Mary Baker Eddy's 6 Days of Revelation. That's known as the Green Book. And then I believe Mary Baker Eddy Lessons of the Seventh Day. Is that the yellow book?
Brown.
Brown.
The Brown Book.
Thank you, the Brown Book. All of these are Richard Oakes compiling the works that he got from the carpenters, taking them to England where they would be safe, and publishing them. So I wanted to explain that because I think many of you seem to understand this. I guess we've just known it through the years. So we call them the colors because it's a lot easier.
So I just want to mention that my grandmother was a CS practitioner, and her teacher was Bliss Knapp. Her favorite book, by far, was the Blue Book.
Thank you. Well, there you go. She's right in
I'm
there.
not alone then.
No.
Florence, you're never alone.
I mean, I have my Blue Book with me, and it's very well. Not as well.
Okay, Mary, okay.
I'm sorry. It's just, I can't resist. But I would like, while we're on the Blue Book, and because we have been talking about animal magnetism, and I wanted to quote this exactly. It's on page 170 of the Blue Book. Rules for overcoming animal magnetism. 1. See what it is trying to do. 2. Know that it cannot do it. 3. See that it is not done. And then, to accomplish this, 1. Be patient. 2. Be meek. 3. Be vigilant. 4. Be sober. 5. Be loving. Now, I thought how superb that is, because we all want some easy answer or easy formula or something on how to overcome animal magnetism. Well, do those things, okay? You can't be those things, because you see what happens when you are those things and you be those things. God is going to speak to you as to where the animal magnetism is operating, and also how to destroy it. You're going to have this direct connection with the Father, and that is how you do it.
It will come out from hiding as you stir things up, and you will not be impressed, and you will not be fearful of it or deceived by it.
So, in other words, are there any easy answers? Well, living your life for God is the answer always. So you want to know how to accomplish handling animal magnetism. Be patient, be meek, be vigilant, be sober, and be loving. And it'll all come to you. Because when you're those things, God speaks. Now, we are also very grateful for many of you who are contributing to our library, which Tom started and is continuing with. We got this package from Sally in Texas, who gave us a big box of things, all things that the Long Year published about the history of Longyear, which was fascinating. I had no idea. And about the early workers. Longyear has been producing newsletters for years now. And we would love to have a complete collection of them because they're very informative. And then we had a Thomas, also a Thomas from New York, but he was from more upstate New York, who came with a friend in a U-Haul. He wasn't here that weekend. But
Oh, it was a big SUV they rented.
he brought us a whole set of early journals, which we're grateful for, and many of them found a home in Jeremy's place, the North Star Cottage, for visitors who come and want to read. And we're very grateful for that. And then Debbie sent us like 3 boxes of books. And one particular, the concordance, was very important. Why, Linda?
The publication date of it was 1908.
It was 1908. Linda had just been praying to find that book, and here it came through Debbie. Anyone else? Oh, and then there's Frances. Goodness, I don't want to miss Frances. She has sent us an amazing collection of early Science and Health and other things. So,
And the Hawthorne House that was signed.
oh, the Hawthorne, yes, that Louise. That book, the Hawthorne Hall book, that was signed by the author, William Lyman Johnson. So, thank you, all of you, thank you. And anyone else that's done it that I haven't mentioned, I hope there wasn't. But thank you. We're very, very, very grateful. And now we have a letter writing thank you committee. We write letters of thank you. And one more thing before we get into the lesson, and that is our dear friend from Brazil, Raul. He comments almost every time we put an audio up and thanks us, which is very sweet, in the comment section. So, Raul, if you're listening, hello, and we love you. Greetings from Plainfield. Anyway, one of his last, he asked about fasting and what it was, what's the true meaning. Now, I had just read, before I read his question, and this is on page 339 of Miscellany. Jesus said to his disciples, "This kind goeth not out but by prayer and fasting." But he did not appoint a fast. Merely to abstain from eating was not sufficient to meet his demand. The animus of his saying was, "Silence appetites, passion, and all that wars against spirit and spiritual power." The fact that he healed a sick man without the observance of a material fast confirms this conclusion. Jesus attended feasts, but we have no record of his observing appointed fasts. St. Paul's days for prayer were every day and every hour. He said, "Pray without ceasing." He classed the usage of special days and seasons for religious observances as belonging not to the Christian era, but to tradition, old wives, fables, and endless genealogy. So the answer to fasting, the definition, what is it? It's to silence appetite, passion, and all that wars against spirit and spiritual power. It is not, anyone who wants to fast, by that I mean abstain from eating, if that's what you want to do, you're free to do whatever you like. But I would say this is the Christ definition, and in that, the Christian Science definition. I've never known any scientist to fast in that way. But we've talked about at times, what did he say? This kind goeth forth not but by prayer and fasting. Prayer and fasting. He said this to the disciples who couldn't heal a case. Prayer, you fill your thought up with the enduring to good and the true. What's true? Fasting. Just what I read. You fast. You just shut it out. You have nothing to do with it. You go cold turkey. All the thoughts that Era would present to you. Any questions or comments?
Yes, in The Healer by David Keaston, there's a chapter starting on page 184 where there's a small section of healings where people felt the presence of Mary Baker Eddy. And one of them, this was after she passed in the material sense, and one of them was Gilbert Carpenter Jr. During the time when they were still being persecuted. Very well worthwhile reading.
Thank you. I think I'm going to appoint you our church historian. You seem to have read many things. Thank you, Mike. And we also got a beautiful letter and pictures from someone in Kenya who runs an orphanage. He sent us pictures of the orphanage, which are the most beautiful pictures of little children he's ever seen.
You can look at it on the bulletin board.
Reverend Charles.
Reverend Charles, yes. And I'm asking Jeremy to put this also up, the pictures and where they're from, of the orphanage and the people there. Yes, on our carousel forever, because it's just, you have to see it. And he's asking, actually, he's asking partnership. He's asking someone to come out and teach. So, do we have any volunteers who would like to go to Kenya and teach these little children? Of course, we can't spare you for more than a few days. Well, maybe a month. But wouldn't that be lovely? Or maybe, if we can get books, get a big box of books out to them. But
they can access the website too, I'm sure.
yes, I'm sure.
Yeah, that's how he found us.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
There. Well, it's quite thrilling because we keep hearing from people from everywhere, and they're finding us, and the remnant is finding us, and that's what's important. Remnant is strong.
I just wanted to say, we just went past 1,700 subscribers on our English YouTube, but we just got our first subscribers on the Punjabi and Urdu YouTube. So, I feel a very good sign.
Well, that is just thrilling. It is. We just get this word out. God prospers it. He brings the increase. He'll put it in the right hands. It just keeps multiplying. You give it to one person, and they give it to 3 more, and then they give it to 10 more, and it just, call it like popcorn when it starts popping.
And how many websites do we now have?
Oh my, we have quite a few. We have 10 languages.
We have at
But
least
English has like 12 of its own.
So we have over 20 websites that Jeremy and Linda, with some help, are managing, and we have 10 different languages, each with their own website. How many channels on YouTube now?
7.
7
channels on YouTube in different languages.
And what did you say about things like YouTube or Facebook, or about their growth and prosperity?
Oh, I had this thought before, like what makes technology worthwhile and keep going. But then when I came here, I realized that there are these things, because we had watched the show about the Gutenberg press and how they were able to get the Bible out. And it just made me realize that through all of time, the things that help get the Word of God out the best, those things stayed. And anything else, including technology that doesn't do that, just goes by the wayside. That's a very helpful thought to me. I don't need to worry about creating this stuff. People are out there right now creating it. They're answering their own call. And when we need it, it'll be there.
Even though I've told Jeremy he has to do this. But I'm glad he doesn't listen to me. In that respect.
Well, I'm trying to find the time to do that.
Well, we just want to be able to buy the
God knows what
Mother
he's doing.
Church.
God knows what he's doing.
Well, and this is the tares and the wheat growing up side by side. I finished reading that book, A World Without Mind, and it can be sound very horrible and threatening. But the tares of the wheat grow up and side by side, and what isn't good will fall. It'll fall by its own accord, and what is good God prospers. This is what Jeremy's saying. And YouTube has been, it's an avenue to get all this stuff out for us. It's all free. It's wonderful.
People are on it all over the world.
Yes. And we thank you. I thank you from the bottom of my heart, all of those translators that we have. Carla is doing a lot more in the translation. She's always done the calendar statements, but now she's going to be doing the 500 watching points.
Yeah, very exciting. Spanish 500 watching points coming soon.
Coming soon. Uta's does the German faithfully every week. We have Bertrand now who does the audio of the French. I'm so grateful for that. Thank you so much. And Suzanne has been diligently doing the French for a long time, the lessons. We have Bella on Chinese. You
need to mention Edith and Teresa.
Thank you.
Definitely.
Edith and Teresa are Spanish. Thank you, Bruce. Yeah. Edith is fairly new. Also, Michael has done Spanish translation. Michael from California.
Teresa has been here a long time, though, right?
Teresa's been a long time.
Yes.
Yeah, a long time.
And very faithful.
And Bruce deals directly with some of these people, as does Jeremy. So, and then now we have this Ted now in Canada who's visited us a few times, and he's going to, due to Jeffrey, which I didn't even know Jeffrey was doing this, but urging him to translate for us in Russian and Ukraine, right?
Mm.
So we have a worldwide outreach, thank God. And God has prospered it and brought these people to us. And all of you have volunteered. Thank you. Thank you so much.
And even more recently, Urdu and Hindi.
Yes.
Yeah, Napoleon. We're going to be doing 500 watching points in Hindi, Urdu, and Punjabi as well. Out there.
So this is our update because we're overflowing. And you all deserve to know. So, the subject this morning, reality. Golden text, Ecclesiastes. I know that whatsoever God doeth, it shall be forever. Nothing can be put to it, nor anything taken from it. And God doeth it, that men should fear before him. Now, the responsive reading is beautiful. This is a beautiful lesson by Florence. I thank Florence. So much to it. And yesterday we had this wonderful discussion, continuing discussion on the commandments, and the quote coming from Essays and Other Footprints, which is what? No, the red book. The red book. Sorry. Hey, Mary Baker Eddy, page 13. And Mrs. Eddy says, the 10 Commandments carried out are indispensable to health, happiness, and immortality. Now, who would like to read the responsive reading? Bruce.
Okay. Psalm 19. The heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament showeth his handiwork. The law of the Lord is perfect, converting the soul. Testimony of the Lord is sure, making wise the simple. The statutes of the Lord are right, rejoicing the heart. The commandment of the Lord is pure, enlightening the eyes. The fear of the Lord is clean, enduring forever. The judgments of the Lord are true and righteous altogether. More to be desired are they than gold, yea, than much fine gold. Sweeter also than honey and the honeycomb. Let the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable in thy sight, O Lord, my strength and my Redeemer.
Thank you. What they're singing today. But look at this. The law of the Lord
Is right.
Perfect.
It converts perfect. It converts your soul. We're talking here. The commandments, yes. The testimony of the Lord is sure. It makes wise the simple. Think you need some wisdom? The statutes are right. You're feeling depressed. God's statutes will rejoice your heart. His commandments, they're pure. They enlighten your eyes. Is your sight getting a little dim?
Or are you unsure of what to do?
I feel that also goes with the fasting. You know what to look at now. So,
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And the fear of the Lord is clean, enduring forever.
And what is the fear of the Lord?
Revering, loving him.
Yeah. Fear is the respectful love, the righteous love, the divine love He has for us, and if we have for Him, it's our safety. It endures forever. God never stops loving us.
And then the judgments are true and righteous altogether. So, you see, God's law does all these things. And this is what Mrs. Eddy was talking about. It's indispensable. You think you can do without obeying the Ten Commandments? If you think you can handle animal magnetism without obeying the Ten Commandments, sorry. You want healing? Obey the commandments. Obey God's commands. Know what they are. This is why we do it so often, why we have Bible studies and roundtables to talk about it so you know what it is and you are doing it. So is there any easy fix?
No.
No. No. And if you're looking for one, forget about it, as they say in Jersey. Forget about it.
Just isn't a mathematical formula you can turn on and turn on.
But it is a science. It is a science, but it has to be lived. And you've got to incorporate these things into your life. And in doing this, you become reflection of God. And that is how you find your perfectibility. No other way. You can't humanly strive to be perfect. You've got to love God, obey Him, and then something comes over you and you can just, like a mirror where you're reflecting Him.
And what is it that comes over you when you are obedient? What comes over you is reality. You become what you really are. You become what God made. You see more clearly God's image and likeness. That's what it means to be His image and likeness. You rise above the mist of all the human nonsense.
Yes, rise above the mist. You see, that's when it all started. He created us all perfectly, and then we listened, whoever listened to the serpent, and the mist came up. Everything got foggy. But we rise above that mist. And in Barbara's forum, she gave the definition of perfect imperfection. Thank you. Finished, complete, not defective, having all that is requisite to its nature and kind, complete and moral excellence. Perfect. And so in that divine state of obedience and obeying God, we have the story of whom? Yes. Jeremy, you want to make any comments on what you said?
Well, yeah, just reading it, I was wondering at first why, agreeing with thy adversary quickly and using wisdom when you go about your daily life, why that wouldn't make them just be quiet, So I wanted to look further into that. And then I remembered Jesus' words, render to Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and to God the things that are God's. And so I started thinking, we can't give our worship and allegiance and salvation away to anyone else, because when we do, that just leads down. So, got to give it to God, and then that's why they had to make that strong stand. So they were not careful to answer.
Thank you. Linda?
I think the thing that stood out, and I was working with this week with that story, is that the thought to me that the ruler brought was a heathen thought. And I thought, here he's telling them, do what I want, worship my gods, do what I think is right, go my direction. And it made me really realize, to pay attention in my own life, what heathen thought I'm allowing to direct me, and be offended by that, because really God is supposed to be directing me. And yesterday we spoke of the problem I had with the one of the commandments. And I realized it wasn't so much that I didn't know the commandment, and I wanted to follow it. It's just that I caved to pressure, and I wasn't given, the right, correct teaching. I'm grateful to be getting it now, and I take responsibility for my part of it. But I realized that the important thing about the Ten Commandments is not caving, and that's what these guys didn't do. They didn't cave.
That's the difference. Thank you. And then we had with Parthens, where he talked about, neither shall the flame kindle upon thee, that thou walkest through the fire, thou shalt not be burned. And he gives a beautiful illustration of that. Again, the fire stopping. Mrs. Evans used to talk about when I think she got a call in the middle of the night, and where her mother and mother's friend were living, and there was a big fire, and Mrs. Evans praying on the way over, like at 2 in the morning, and by the time she got there, all the flames stopped.
The firemen couldn't explain what happened because they didn't put the fire out.
And in this book I mentioned last week about physicians telling these inexplainable so-called miracles, they tell of one who, and I know this doctor was, I'm sure, deeply religious, but his daughter was on a bus going to a dance competition, and the bus caught fire, and it was just rapidly burning, and the bus itself was just full of smoke. The children couldn't see their feet. But he said something just happened. It was like a moisture, like a big sponge or something. All of a sudden, the flame stopped for a time, and all 40 girls were able to safely exit the bus before it totally burst into flames. So these things are true, and keep them in your mind as true. Don't think of impossibilities. These are natural. This is God working in our lives. When we're doing right and obeying Him, tremendous things can happen.
It's a shame that all of these so-called miracles don't make the front page of local newspapers.
Yeah, yes.
Because they express, they demonstrate what's real. That's why we have to publish them.
That's right. That's why we have this on our noteworthy news. And so, Carol, read verse 27 in the Daniel 3 story, and the princes and governors.
And the princes, governors, and captains, and the king's counselors, being gathered together, saw these men upon whose bodies the fire had no power, nor was an hair of their heads singed, neither were their coats changed, nor the smell of fire had passed on them.
So what does that mean?
The golden text. Nothing can be added to them, nothing taken away. Perfect still.
Perfect still. Thank you. And we were taught here about the smell of the fire. Once you've had this tremendous healing in science, whatever it is, it's totally gone. Every bit of it is gone. Not even the smell remains, even though you might have been in the middle of smoke and all this. It's all gone. Not even the remembrance. Totally gone. So, remember this tremendous story. And then we'll read 15 in Science and Health. Okay, Jeffrey?
You say, I have burned my fingers. This is an exact statement, more exact than you suppose. For mortal mind and not matter burns it. Holy inspiration has created states of mind which have been able to nullify the action of the flame. As in the Bible case, 3 young Hebrew captives cast into the Babylonian furnace, while an opposite mental state might be spontaneous combustion.
Thank you. So, the power of your right thought can put out the fire, or a very agitated, disturbed thought cause all kinds of things. You know, when people are constantly having trouble with their computers or their emails or other things, it shows, a disturbance. So peace, be still. Anyone else on this story?
And Jesus wouldn't have told us to be ye therefore perfect, even as your Father which is in heaven is perfect, if it wasn't possible.
Yeah, and I like what Suzanne wrote. Remember that man's perfection is real and unimpeachable, which means cannot be called into question. And in the image and likeness of God, in whom all being is painless and permanent. So in this image and likeness of God, it's painless. You're having struggles with pain. Well, think on this. How can I live my life more in obedience to God, more pleasing to Him? Think about the responsive reading. Think about what Mrs. Eddy said in handling animal magnetism. Are you patient, meek, loving? And then,
sorry.
No, I was going to call on you. Go ahead.
No, I think that statement, I have burned my finger, in the way he says that this is an exact statement, is so important, because I realize, when something is wrong, we quickly, not thinking, agree with it so quickly, instead of rather saying, like she said, when you fall, declare that you could not have fallen. I used to wonder, what do you mean by that? But agreeing that, okay, I've fallen, give us the reason, or say you have some pain, you say, okay, oh gosh, yesterday I did such and such. It's our initial quick agreement with it that sets it all into the more to be dealt with.
Thank you. Thank you. And Mrs. Eddy most definitely says that in Science and Health. The 2 times she speaks of accidents, she'll say, you declare, yes, you're having a problem. That's what it means to agree with thy adversary quickly. It means to shut it off fast. Don't let it talk. Know the truth. That's why we declare God good. No accidents in mind. Well, our bell is rung. Gary will read from the Blue Book for our ending.
Page 216. When man begins to see himself as the reflection of God, mind, and recognizes that he has within himself the capacity to act as possessing all power from him in whom we live and move and have our being, he has reached the highest of all endowments and fruitful of all good works. He who is obedient to truth has immense power for service. The truth frees him from ignorance of his capacities and privileges. It fortifies and sustains him under all circumstances. It is here and now. Pentecostal power is always present. It is the power of mind enabling man to do the will of wisdom. For God's biddings are always enablings. It is the power to think, to act, to speak, so that life will be fruitful and joyous. It is the capacity every man possesses to act in harmony with divine power. And this is to preserve a scientific sense of being. Nothing is truth but the absolute. We do not know anything. Mind is the only source of power. Thought is the only force. Therefore, those who have turned to the fountainhead of being for the solution of any problem have brought such satanic force into intelligent activity that the results may seem incredible.
Titanic force of God. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you all.
Thank you.